There's a moment in every man's life when something shifts deep inside, subtle but powerful. You feel a tension you can't quite name. It doesn't start with a fight. It doesn't begin with evidence. It begins with a feeling, a quiet, lingering doubt, a glance that's colder, a smile that feels rehearsed, a silence where laughter used to live. And in that silence, something inside you whispers, something's not right. But instead of trusting that voice, most men ignore it. They bury it under logic, routine, and hope. They rationalize her distance, excuse her indifference, and label their instincts as insecurity. They tell themselves they're overthinking, being dramatic, or just tired. But the truth is, a woman who cheats always leaves signs. Always. You just have to be brave enough to see them. This isn't about turning men into skeptics or pushing them into paranoia. This is about awareness, real, grounded, necessary awareness. Because deception doesn't arrive with a red flag waving in the air. It slips in quietly through behavior changes, emotional withdrawal, and shifts in energy. Most men don't miss the signs because they're blind. They miss them because they don't want to see them. The sad reality is that betrayal rarely comes as a shock. It just feels like one. In truth, it's been unfolding for weeks, months, sometimes even years. But the signs were dismissed. The gut feeling was silenced. The intuition was buried under the fear of losing someone who had already emotionally left. Let's be clear, loyalty is not just physical, it's emotional, it's energetic, it's rooted in presence, respect, and commitment. When a woman starts pulling away, changing her patterns, withholding affection, and building walls of secrecy, that's not just a phase, that's a shift in loyalty. And here's what every man needs to understand. If you don't listen when she grows distant, you'll be left listening when she finally says goodbye. Not because she told you, but because she showed you, and you weren't ready to accept what you saw. There's no pride in pretending everything's okay while your soul is screaming for clarity. There's no strength in tolerating emotional starvation. Being a man isn't about how much pain you can endure silently. It's about having the courage to confront reality with open eyes. This message is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that real strength lies in awareness, not denial. You can't protect your heart if you keep defending behavior that's breaking it. You can't build a future with someone who's busy hiding a double life. Your peace, your sanity, your self-worth, they're not negotiable. It's not about catching someone. It's not about revenge. It's about recognizing when your value is being overlooked, when your loyalty is being taken for granted, and when your trust is being quietly betrayed. You deserve a relationship built on mutual respect and transparency, not confusion, excuses, and emotional games. You deserve a woman who shows up for you fully, not someone who leaves a part of herself in someone else's world while pretending to stand beside you. So if you're watching this and that small voice inside you is nodding, pay attention, not to me, not to the screen, to yourself. What have you been pretending not to notice? What have you been excusing because you don't want to feel the pain of truth? How long will you protect someone else's secret at the cost of your own sanity? This is not weakness. This is strength, the kind that demands honesty with yourself. Because no matter how painful the truth may be, it will never hurt you as much as staying loyal to a lie. So take a breath, get still, and listen to what your intuition has been trying to tell you all along. Not with fear, not with anger, but with clarity. Because the first step to protecting your heart is recognizing the signs that it's already under threat. There's a kind of silence that doesn't bring peace. It brings unease. It feels heavy, unspoken, and tense. This is the silence that enters a relationship when emotional disconnection begins. It's the first storm, the most subtle shift, and yet the most powerful. She may still be in the same room. She may still sleep in the same bed, share the same meals, and even say the same words, but something is different. It's in the tone, the energy, the absence of depth. You start to feel like you're talking to a shell of the person you once knew. She's there, but not present. She's hearing you, but not listening. She's speaking, but not sharing. This is not just distance, it's detachment, and it almost always comes before deeper betrayal. Emotional withdrawal is the quiet announcement that something sacred is breaking. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it until the damage is too deep. Let's be honest. Love isn't measured by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's measured by presence, by how someone shows up for you when no one's watching. When a woman is emotionally loyal, you feel seen, heard, supported. You feel her energy even in silence. There's warmth in her glance, concern in her tone, and connection in the way she leans in to understand you. But when that emotional loyalty fades, everything becomes cold. Conversations become shorter. The lightness disappears. She's no longer curious about your thoughts or your dreams. She stops asking you how your day went, not because she forgot, but because she no longer feels invested. And here's where it gets dangerous. Most men don't know how to deal with emotional distance. We're not taught to recognize it. We're told to be strong, to brush it off, to give space. But sometimes space isn't healing anything. It's creating room for someone else to enter. A woman doesn't cheat overnight. She starts by disconnecting. Piece by piece, she pulls away emotionally, often before she even realizes what she's doing. But while she's drifting, you're still holding on, trying to make sense of the silence. You think she's just stressed, that she's tired, that things will go back to normal. But deep down, you know, this isn't about mood swings. This is a shift in commitment. And when you try to talk about it, she avoids the conversation. She changes the subject. She becomes defensive or dismissive. She might even tell you that everything's fine with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. But real love doesn't hide. Real love communicates. Real love leans in when things feel off, not away. Emotional disconnection is often the first betrayal, because before she gives her body to someone else, she gives her heart, her attention, her care. She laughs more with others. She texts more than she talks. She becomes more animated in other spaces while going numb in yours. That's not just coincidence, that's choice. And the worst part? You begin to question yourself. You ask if you've done something wrong, if you're not enough, if you're imagining it all. But this isn't your fault, it's your signal. A signal that the foundation you're standing on is no longer holding both of you, that she's quietly moving her heart elsewhere. This is your moment, not to chase, not to beg, but to see clearly. Because emotional detachment is one of the clearest signs of betrayal, not just in what she does, but in what she no longer does. No more "how are you?" No more long talks before bed. No more "be safe, I'll miss you." No more joy in just being near you. It all slowly disappears. And if you let it continue without addressing it, you'll wake up next to a stranger wearing the face of someone you used to love. This is not about controlling her. This is about protecting your emotional well-being. When you feel her drifting, speak up. Don't accuse, observe. Don't chase, clarify. Don't deny, accept. Because if she's already disconnected from you emotionally, her loyalty is already compromised. You deserve emotional presence, not just physical proximity. You deserve a woman who chooses you daily, not just with words, but with energy, time, and intention. And when that presence disappears, it's not the beginning of a bad week, it's the beginning of the end, unless it's confronted with truth and clarity. So ask yourself, is she really here, or is she already gone? Trust isn't just built on loyalty, it's built on transparency. And in today's world, the device that holds the most secrets isn't a journal or a locked drawer. It's the phone. There was a time when her phone was just a tool. It sat on the table face up. She'd laugh at messages, hand it to you to change the music, or leave it in the other room without a second thought. But suddenly, something shifts. Now it's glued to her side, always in her hand, always on silent, always face down. You don't need to read messages to know something's wrong. The energy around secrecy is louder than any ringtone. The way she clutches her phone when she walks by, the way she positions it so you can't glance at the screen, the sudden anxiety if it buzzes while you're near. These aren't coincidences, they're changes. And changes mean something. When someone has nothing to hide, they don't act like they're being hunted. They don't become overly protective of something that was once so casual. Passwords that never existed are now updated. Apps are locked. Notifications disappear as quickly as they come in. And if you ask about it, you're met with defensiveness or a sarcastic "what, don't you trust me?" Let's be clear. Trust is earned by consistent behavior, not demanded with guilt. You're not wrong for noticing patterns. You're not insecure for paying attention to energy shifts. You're intuitive, and that's a strength, not a flaw. A woman hiding something will often rely on one tactic: deflection. She'll turn your questions into accusations. Why are you so obsessed with my phone? You must be hiding something if you're this suspicious. Suddenly, you're the one under interrogation for simply noticing the truth. And here's what makes it more painful. You don't even want to check. You're not someone who spies. You're not looking to control. But when access is suddenly restricted and behavior turns suspicious, your instincts speak up. You don't want to snoop, you want to breathe. But secrecy suffocates. Understand this, cheating doesn't always start with touch. It starts with a text, a message, just a friend who becomes a priority. A secret connection that slowly replaces emotional intimacy with you. And while she's staring into her screen, laughing, smiling, locking it as you approach, you begin to feel the gap growing between you. This isn't about being controlling. It's about being aware of behavioral shifts. In healthy relationships, there is mutual openness. It doesn't mean you demand passwords or violate privacy, but there is no fear in transparency. If she panics when you touch her phone or always carries it like a ticking bomb, that is not normal. That is not respect. That is not love. Secrecy and intimacy cannot coexist. You cannot feel secure when you're constantly being shut out of a world she's investing more and more of herself into. And sometimes that world is another person, another connection, another emotional priority, one that lives in her texts, her calls, her late-night notifications. And if you try to bring it up calmly, if you express your discomfort, and she gaslights you, calls you crazy, dramatic, or jealous, that's not a defense. That's a red flag. You are allowed to feel uncomfortable when the behavior no longer matches the bond. Don't fall into the trap of second-guessing your intuition. Don't apologize for asking questions when patterns scream for answers. When the phone becomes a fortress and you're treated like the enemy for noticing, the trust is already fractured. There's no such thing as suddenly private in a previously open relationship. Yes, everyone deserves space, but space is not the same as secrecy. One is healthy. The other is betrayal waiting to be exposed. You're not asking for control. You're asking for consistency. And if the consistency is gone, if her attention is always elsewhere, if her reactions are always defensive, if her phone has become a sacred object, something is wrong. So ask yourself this: what changed? Why did it change? And what is your heart trying to protect you from? Because when the phone becomes more important than the connection, more guarded than her heart, more active than her effort, you're no longer just fighting distance. You're fighting deception. And the longer you ignore the signs, the harder it becomes to face the truth. There's a unique kind of confusion that sets in when someone close to you begins living a life that no longer includes you. You start to notice the calendar filling up with things you didn't know about. The evenings become shorter. The weekends become busier. Suddenly, she's tied up, running late, or out with friends, more and more often. But something feels off. It's not the schedule, it's the secrecy behind it. Where she once shared the details of her day, now there are only vague responses. Where she once invited you into her world, now you're left outside, guessing. These aren't just busy days. These are new routines you're not a part of. Unexplained absences are not about the hours lost. They're about the connection fading. It's the moments where you feel like a stranger in her life, no longer informed, no longer prioritized. It's the late-night outings that never happened before, the new work obligations that seem to arrive out of nowhere, the sudden hobbies, the unfamiliar friends, the unanswered calls. You start to wonder if you're imagining it all. You ask yourself if you're being paranoid. But here's the truth: patterns don't lie, people do. And when the patterns shift without explanation, it's often because something is being hidden. When loyalty is intact, people communicate. They offer clarity without being asked. They involve you not because they have to, but because they want to. But when someone is no longer emotionally loyal, they don't just pull away emotionally. They begin building a separate life. And the worst part, it doesn't always look suspicious at first. It can be disguised as independence, self-care, or even professional ambition. But what makes it clear is the growing wall between you and her daily life. You no longer know where she is, who she's with, or why she's avoiding being with you. A woman who's investing herself somewhere else slowly starts to remove herself from where she once felt connected. And it shows in her schedule, in her stories, in her sudden freedom that excludes you. It's not about controlling where she goes. It's not about keeping score. It's about noticing when a relationship stops being a partnership and turns into a performance, where one person pretends everything's fine while emotionally vacating the relationship. And let's not pretend every disappearance is innocent. When someone doesn't want to be questioned, they start creating situations that make questioning difficult. They become reactive. They label your concerns as clingy or possessive. They flip the script and say, "Why are you keeping tabs on me?" when all you're really doing is trying to understand what changed. But when time away becomes consistent, when explanations become empty, and when transparency is replaced with tension, you're not being insecure, you're being alert. People don't hide what they're proud of, they hide what they feel guilty about. And here's the key: if her absences are matched with emotional distance, if her time away feels guarded, if her routines no longer include the partnership you once shared, then chances are something deeper is going on. Let's talk about energy. You can feel when someone is no longer giving you the best of them. You can feel when you've become a background character in someone else's life. And when your intuition tells you that her new routines are more than just routine, it's because your spirit recognizes withdrawal. Your heart knows when it's being replaced. Consistency matters. In a healthy relationship, your partner's world doesn't shrink to exclude you. It expands to include you. If her new life doesn't have space for you, then it's no longer a shared future. It's a separation in progress. You don't need to track her. You don't need to chase her. You simply need to watch how the energy shifts. Does she still make time for you, or are you an afterthought? Does she communicate when she's away, or are you left in silence? Does she return to you with warmth or indifference? Absence without explanation is not space. It's a signal that your place in her life is no longer what it used to be. And while the truth hurts, denial will hurt you more. Every unanswered question, every unexplained absence, every shift in routine, it's all telling a story. The only question is, are you willing to read it? Because the longer you pretend it's nothing, the longer you stay in something, there comes a point in the breakdown of a relationship where the emotional climate changes, not just through silence or distance, but through conflict. Small disagreements become major arguments. Calm conversations turn into accusations. And the person you once trusted with your heart begins to feel like they're fighting against you, not for you. This isn't by accident. When someone is hiding something, when guilt starts to build beneath the surface, it rarely stays buried. It leaks out in sarcasm, in coldness, in blame. And what once was a loving connection becomes a battleground for control, deflection, and emotional projection. One of the most telling signs of infidelity isn't what she does in secret. It's how she starts treating you openly. A woman who is cheating often becomes irritable, short-tempered, and emotionally volatile. You'll notice she starts picking fights over meaningless things. The energy is always tense. You feel like you're walking on eggshells in your own home. Every word you say seems to trigger something. Every request feels like an attack to her. Why? Because she's carrying guilt. And guilt is a heavy emotion. It creates discomfort. That discomfort must go somewhere, and the easiest way to release it is to redirect it toward you. She blames you for everything. You're too clingy, too distant, too boring, too unavailable. Suddenly, you're no longer the man she once admired. You're the man she uses to justify her betrayal. This is called emotional projection. Rather than face her own wrongdoing, she shifts the focus onto you. Her accusations are not reflections of truth. They're reflections of her inner conflict. Think about it. Someone who is loyal has no reason to create chaos. Someone who is invested in the relationship seeks resolution, not endless conflict. But when someone is betraying the very foundation of trust, they need to create emotional distance to avoid accountability. And blame is the fastest way to do it. Arguments become a shield. If she can keep you constantly defending yourself, she never has to explain her own behavior. If you're always feeling guilty, she never has to feel her own. If you're always on edge, she never has to deal with your intuition getting too close to the truth. This is not love. This is manipulation. A healthy relationship allows room for imperfection, but it also allows room for honesty, for repair, for shared accountability. When everything suddenly becomes your fault, when you're always the villain, when you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough, that's not emotional honesty. That's a tactic designed to keep you distracted from asking the real questions. It becomes a cycle. She creates distance. You try harder. She pushes you away. You pull closer. She criticizes. You apologize. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to shrink inside the very relationship you once felt safe in. You lose your voice, your confidence, and your clarity. But here's the truth you need to hear. You are not responsible for someone else's betrayal. You are not the reason someone chooses dishonesty. No matter how imperfect you are, cheating is a choice. Lying is a choice. Emotional manipulation is a choice. You don't deserve to be blamed for someone else's lack of integrity. You don't deserve to be gaslighted into believing you caused her disloyalty. And if the arguments feel manufactured, if the conflict feels forced, if the blame feels rehearsed, it probably is. This is how people who are cheating create moral cover. They make you question yourself so you stop questioning them. But your intuition knows better. Your heart knows when the energy is off, when her tone has changed, when her eyes don't meet yours the way they used to, when her love starts feeling more like criticism than care. You can't fix a relationship that's being sabotaged from the inside. You can't grow where blame is used as a weapon. And you can't hold space for someone who keeps turning the light off when you try to see clearly. So step back. Watch the patterns. Listen to the words, but trust the behavior. Does she fight to connect or just to win? Does she communicate to understand or to avoid being exposed? When love turns into blame, The truth is never far behind. And if she's constantly pushing you away while accusing you of being the problem, it might be because she's hiding something she doesn't want you to see. Remember, conflict isn't always proof of passion. Sometimes it's a cover-up that's already falling apart. There's a moment in every relationship when you begin to notice the absence of touch. But it's not just about the physical. It's about the emotional connection that once lived in every embrace, every kiss, every glance across the room. When that connection begins to fade, it's never random. It's a signal, a symptom of something deeper, often something broken. Intimacy is one of the first things to disappear when a person's loyalty has shifted, not just in the bedroom but in everyday moments. You used to feel her warmth even in silence. Her hand would reach for yours. Her head would rest on your shoulder. Her presence alone felt like home. Now she pulls away. She turns her back at night. She dodges kisses with excuses. You touch her arm and she subtly shrinks from your reach. You ask if something's wrong and she says she's tired. Every time. But the tiredness never ends. The not tonight becomes not this week, and eventually, not anymore. Understand this. Intimacy doesn't die because of routine. It dies because of disconnect. And when that disconnect is tied to infidelity, the pattern is sharp and predictable. A woman who is emotionally or physically involved with someone else often begins to shut off affection toward her partner. Not out of cruelty, but because her heart and body are no longer in alignment with the relationship she's in. Her emotional investment is elsewhere. Her desire, her attention, her vulnerability, these are now reserved for someone else. So what's left between you becomes hollow, mechanical, distant. And if you do try to initiate, you may notice she becomes defensive, irritated, or she simply fakes it, going through the motions without presence. You feel the difference. You can't fake warmth. You can't fake emotional closeness. You can't force a kiss to feel real when love has left the room. The irony is, most men blame themselves at this point. You begin to wonder if you're no longer attractive, no longer exciting, no longer enough. You try harder. You change things. You become more romantic, more generous, more attentive, hoping that if you just do more, she'll come back. But this is the painful truth. You cannot romance someone into integrity. You cannot love someone back into loyalty if they've already chosen to give their heart elsewhere. Loss of affection isn't a random cold spell. It's an intentional withdrawal. It's the physical manifestation of emotional cheating, and sometimes that cheating is already physical too. When a woman is intimate with another man, she often cannot maintain intimacy with her partner without guilt rising to the surface. The emotional conflict becomes unbearable. So instead of dealing with it, she avoids, she pulls away, she creates distance, hoping the tension will dissolve on its own. But intimacy isn't just about sex. It's about small moments, the morning I love you, the forehead kiss, the way she once made you feel wanted without saying a word. When that's gone, you're left with routine, but no relationship. You become roommates with someone who once promised forever, and when you try to talk about it, when you express that you feel unwanted or unloved, she may dismiss you. Say you're being dramatic, say it's not a big deal. She might even blame you, accuse you of being too needy or emotionally sensitive. But don't let that distort your reality. Your need for intimacy isn't weakness. It's human. It's foundational. And when it disappears, it matters. Because where intimacy dies, betrayal often lives. Here's what you need to ask yourself. Has her touch changed? Has her desire vanished? Has her effort disappeared? Because if the answer is yes, and if this shift has lasted weeks or months, you're not in a rough patch. You're being slowly removed from her world. And here's the most painful part. The absence of affection doesn't just leave you lonely. It erodes your confidence, your self-worth, your emotional health. You begin to shrink in your own skin, trying to understand why the person who once reached for you now recoils. But this is the truth that will set you free. It's not your fault. When someone pulls away without explanation, when they withhold love and call it normal, when they make you feel like a burden for needing connection, they're not protecting you. They're protecting their lie. And the longer you tolerate emotional starvation, the harder it becomes to recognize your own value. So don't wait for affection to return that was never meant to be withheld. Don't beg for closeness from someone who's already closed off. You deserve to be wanted, not tolerated, chosen, not avoided, touched with love, not guilt. When intimacy fades, truth is often close behind. Have the courage to face it.